Hey, business builders. Some of you go out and work a job and are in corporate for a number of years and then decide to go out on your own. But some of you knew right from the get-go that you wanted to be an entrepreneur. Today's guest is one of those guys. Today's guest is Buddy Touchinsky, who has been a member of Business Builder Camp groups for, since we really started them. So probably about 2.5 years. And Buddy attended a live camp, the first live camp that we ever did in Gettysburg back in 2018. And Buddy, as you'll hear in the story today, went to school for chiropractic. And when he came out of school, knew right away that he wanted to open his own practice. He did that. And since then, he's progressively done and worked in businesses, started businesses, bought businesses in our local area. He's close to me here in Schuylkill County that are related to health and wellness. So Buddy has owned a few gyms. He had his Blue Mountain Chiropractic, which he started right out of school. And today he talks about what it was like to start from ground zero, add his first employee, progressively build another piece, move buildings. He moved out of the building that his parents owned that he was leasing. And so Buddy has continued to be on a mission. The true north that he has is health and wellness for his community. So after he moved, then it became a health food store, which he runs with his wife, Susie Touchinsky, who is also a business builder. So we have a guest who is not only a business builder himself, but also lives in a whole business building household, multiple businesses. There's been gyms in there that he started. And now he has a brick and mortar full healthcare practice called Peak Integrative Medicine. And so he's gone from chiropractic to health food and has now brought in other doctors, medical doctors, chiropractic, health coaches, doctors to build this integrative medical practice. And so he's always moving and growing. I can't wait to share Buddy Touchinsky with you. Enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Business Builder Way podcast, where we help business builders grow leadership skills and wisdom and stay grounded through business builder hero stories. So let's get after it. Hey, welcome to the Business Builder Way podcast. We're joined today by Buddy Touchinsky, coming to us from Orwigsburg, Pennsylvania. And we're doing both audio and video. So you just held up the peace sign there. I'll do the color commentary for anybody who's listening, but really great to spend time with you today, Buddy.
Always a pleasure to talk with you and share whatever wisdom I can with the other business builders out there.
Yeah, definitely. So we're gonna work into your story, and the story will give some places of like the path and the journey and the good and the bad and how you integrate it with personal life. And we'll work in some of the what to do and the things that you've done to break through various barriers. But where I'd like to start is people, I know you quite well. The community, our closed community knows you quite well, but other people don't. And you just had where you're in the process of opening a new brick and mortar facility. So start us there. Tell us, we're going to do a little bit of like what this is that you're building and who you are. So let's start present day. You're about ready to turn the key in a new facility, right? So what is that new facility?
Yeah, so it's called Peak Integrative Medicine. We have 2 nurse practitioner. One is pediatric focused and the other is adult focused. We have our medical director. She is a physician and she also practices functional medicine. You have myself, I'm a chiropractor and functional medicine practitioner. And then we have another chiropractor joining us for the musculoskeletal stuff, the neck pain, back pain, joint pain, stuff like that. So the vision and the dream has been to be able to offer what we can to people that really takes care of probably like 90% of why people would show up to a traditional family practice. So it's anything from back pain to headaches to the colds, coughs, and earaches and all the stuff going around this time of year, where it can be handled under one roof. And then in addition, be able to focus on long-term health. So not just the acute stuff, but what's your heart disease risk? And can we see what's coming down the pike by 10 or 20 years? Do you have pre-diabetes or diabetes? And are things that we can do to affect that from a lifestyle perspective and from a more preventative perspective, instead of just that kind of accepting our fate and saying, I'm just going to have to take these meds for the rest of my life. So a little bit of that group practice thing where we incorporate all of those services and then approaching it from a slightly different perspective than, say, the insurance-based medical model.
So right now, what, of course, I've seen it, but to help people picture it, brick and mortar business, we could call it a doctor's office plus, and with plenty of space to a waiting room and reception area, and you're even going to have a place with exercise equipment for people that are doing the chiropractic work, but also strength training, things like that. Same building, there's a yoga studio from a Yoga Be Yoga, another area business that is not yours, but it's in alignment with your mission of helping people in our community be healthier, right? And what has to happen is, we're recording this on December 13th of 22. What needs to happen before you start like moving in that place?
Right now, we're down to the nitty gritty here. We just need to, there's one or two things with the building that need to be corrected before we move in. And we just need the internet phone company to come in and install the line and plug that in, get that one or two interior things fixed, and we're ready to roll.
And you are already serving people, patients, clients, customers, whatever you might like to call it, through Peak. It's just that you're not in that new building. So you have a building already. Tell us about that existing office that you have.
Yeah, so that's where my chiropractic office has been the past, I'd say 12 years. And we have mainly 4 treatment rooms, I guess we can call them. And we're pretty maxed out with just the chiropractic patients alone. So we are seeing new members for the medical services, and we're working people in there, but we're really kind of waiting to ramp things up until we're moved over into the new space. So yeah, we're working out of the current space now. We're doing well with the say 120 or so members that we have so far. But we're going up to 300 members by spring is our goal. And then ultimately 3 years down the road, 4 years plus, anywhere from say 700 to 1,000 members. So we're going to be small but mighty practice. We want to serve our members and serve them well. And then if that model works, so our model is a little bit different too. We don't take insurance. We're a membership-based practice, which we can talk more about if you want, but we're testing out this model in a rural community. We have these models in more urban areas, but hey, if this works out well here for us, then who knows, long-term vision would be to take the show on the road and either work with other practitioners like myself that maybe have an established practice to expand, or other medical practitioners to kind of take back control of their own businesses versus just being an employee, not just, but being an employee of a large system and a cog in the wheel, so to speak, because that's leading to a lot of physician burnout, medical provider burnout. It's inflexible. I love economies of scale. I love that whole concept, but I'm not sure if it's working out for healthcare.
Yeah, and then also attached to that building is Healthy Habits Natural Market. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so my wife previously lived down in Baltimore area, and we love Trader Joe's. And when I would visit, I loved the stuff that they are offering. And then I would come home here, and then eventually when she moved up, when we got married, it's like, well, we got nothing anywhere within like a 30-mile radius. So when I moved my chiropractic practice from its original location, we had, I'd say, about 1,200 extra square feet, where it was a little bit too much. We just didn't know what to do with it. So I'm like, well, we don't have this stuff. Let's go ahead and give it a try. Not knowing anything about the retail space, we made a go of it. 2008, 2 months later, the economy crashed, and we really learned a lot back then. I think it kind of set me up for helping out, going through some ups and downs now. But yeah, we have the health food store next door. It's 12, 13 years old, and that's operating as well.
You mentioned all the professionals that are joining Peak, chiropractors, nurse practitioners, osteopath or DO. You have them, and then how many other employees do you have in your life right now?
Yeah, so in addition to the 5 of us practitioners, we have our front desk person, Stacy, and we have another part-timer that comes in at night, Denise. That's for the practice. And then for the health food store, we have 3 main employees there, 1 full-time, 2 part-time, and a couple other helpers part-time in addition to those.
Awesome. And one of the things we care about with Business Builder Camp, and we work to develop in each other, is a full life, not just the business, so to speak. So what do you like to do when you're not working and creating these businesses? And what are you integrating anyway? What's the rest? What are some of the other things in life, buddy?
Yeah, I've a really good group of friends in the area, and we like to just enjoy time together, playing cards or hanging out on the porch. We like to go hiking this time of year. We're just getting through the hunting season, so I like to spend a few afternoons here and there out in the woods with nature. Not always getting something. Like this year, I didn't get anything, but so those are things I enjoy. I like spending time with my family, my wife Susie, my 9-year-old daughter Megan, and then our rescue dog Todd. So we've set up our home. We're post-COVID now, so we kind of learned the importance of having good space around you, a good home environment, and we really enjoy it there. We're in a nice, quiet neighborhood, and so yeah, that's what we like to do.
You know, you are really a group of friends. The fact that you mentioned that, like, instantly, I think sometimes I need to up my friend game. And I feel like I've even said this to you because I've known you and your friend Nick, for example. You've come and bought pork from us when we were farming, and you are really good at that. You're really good at that.
We have our core group, and probably the same core group we've had for the past, I'd say, at least 9-10 years, because it's before Megan was born. But yeah, it's been like just we have a chat group, and we send people messages. We send each other messages probably once a day almost, or at least daily, or at least every other day. And a lot of it's busting each other's chops and kind of keeping it lighthearted. But you need help. You have that. You want to hang out, poker game, whatever. So yeah, I'm really thankful for that group.
Well, you've worked hard at it and you've been intentional, much like we talk about with business. Yeah, you just demonstrated that by talking about the chat group. And you have family close by, right? Like you have in-laws that are close by, and I see that you interact with your family too.
Yeah, my parents are just down the road, like 5 minutes away, and that's a blessing, because if we never need help with Megan, they've always been there. And then our in-laws moved right next door, like next door, adjoining to our lot. And although that can be a problem sometimes, they're great. Sure. We have good boundaries, but there again, it's nice that if I can't, like I need to pick up Megan 3:15 at the bus stop, if something happens where there's an emergency here, I know I can text grandma and she can go down, or grandpa, and they can go grab her from the bus stop down the block.
Super. So I want to go back and talk about how you got here and your entrepreneurial journey and the business build journey, but also just in setting the current stage. It strikes me that some people would be a chiropractor like you've had a chiropractic business, which we'll talk about how you started that and how you build it. But there's a lot of chiropractors out there that would have gotten interested in business building and scaling and growing, and their path would have been hire more chiropractors, open another chiropractic office, and that's all great. That happens a lot in the dental field and other caring fields. Why have you not gone that path to just trying to massively or significantly scale chiropractic? Why the health food store and other doctors and professionals and things like that?
Yeah. So one, maybe I should have. Sometimes I look back on that and it's like, well, maybe I should have just taken what I built and take it to the next level and perfect it and maximize what I'm doing there. But I don't know if I would have been happy doing that. So another answer to that is I get bored easily. Like once I think I have something figured out, it's like, all right, now what's next? So when I had my chiropractic office, I was doing well. I could have done a lot better with it if I would have focused on it, sure. But I just felt like, all right, I want to try something new. I want to challenge myself a little bit. I want to do something different. So that's when we jumped into the health food store. The timing was just right for that. And then now we move forward and into this integrative medical practice. It's probably more in this respect is it's more of I saw a need in the local market, and I was frustrated by what I knew I could offer people or what they needed, but what I couldn't offer as just being chiropractor, not just being, but having chiropractic services alone. So then that's when I started to learn more about lifestyle medicine and go into that world and realize, well, heck, this is very effective and we're seeing great results and it's very rewarding for me. And so where do we go with this next? And then COVID hit, and I had the opportunity to expand the building. And I kind of had a fork in the road there, decide whether, okay, do I stick with what I'm doing or do we take the chance?
Well, your initial answer there again was really great. Maybe I should have, maybe I should have scaled. But I think the beautiful thing about you all that are building businesses is you get to be creative. Your canvas is business, and your paints are people and borrowing money and dreams and systems, and you do whatever you want and whatever brings you satisfaction and happiness, as long as you still have to pay attention to profitability, because it needs to be a going concern and it needs to be in the black, so to speak, or else you need to have a really big dream and keep borrowing lots more money and doing IPOs and all that kind of thing, right?
Either that, or we have a hunting cabin. I mean, it's falling apart. It's nothing to shake a stick at, but worst case scenario, we move into that and we have no expenses and we build ourselves back up.
Yeah, you would be okay. But I think so often we would hear that, well, you should do it this way, or you should do this, or logically, if you want to make the most money, you would just be a chiropractor and you would, niche into that, and you would wash, rinse, repeat, and create your formulas like Subway markets, right? Only sandwiches, and always pickles and the onions are all in the same spot on that bar to make it easier. And that is one path. That's cool. But that's not your path.
No, I don't think I would have been happy following a plan. That's why I became a chiropractor in the first place, knowing that it was that or physical therapy or medicine. And I know I didn't want to be a part of a big system where you kind of have to follow their plan and follow their procedures. And I like the idea of doing things the way I saw fit.
Yeah, nice. Well, and you're doing it, and you're making it real. You're making the dream reality, as evidenced by this new building and that brand new sign that you have that people can go look up online and see that awesome backlit sign. So, but do take us back, because everybody who is on this business building journey had to start somewhere. There had to be a starting point, and we use the model of the hero's journey as we tell some of these stories. And in the hero's journey, the first phase is the call, the call to business. In this case, the call to start something. When did you hear the call to have your own business as opposed to, being an employee?
I think it goes back to my grandfather. He always, not always, but for a big part of his life, he did his own thing. Him and my grandmother. He was a coal miner, worked in the mines, was a mechanic, was a truck driver. But eventually, at some point, they got into the restaurant business. And for those of us here in Schuylkill County, it's actually the gas station, the full service between St. Clair and Frackville. They ran that as a restaurant for several years before buying a barroom and tavern in Frackville, and then they ended up running that for 35 years. So being with him a lot growing up, he got me used to like counting change and like budgeting and going out to local businesses. And they haggled back then. So we went, and I forget what we ended up getting, socks or something from the local place. It wasn't like the department store. And he said, well, if we get one for this, can we get three for this? And the guy's like, yeah, okay. So he took me around town and to the beverage store to pick up the orders. So I kind of got a glimpse behind the curtain of running a business. And I think part of that probably stuck with me. That, and just my own parents encouraged me to do something different than what the path they took. So my mom worked in the facility. She's a physical therapy assistant, and she wouldn't come home and complain a lot, but she would say like there's always politics, and yeah, she likes it, but yeah, she's kind of stuck in that system, so to speak. And then my dad, he was a welder for most of his life, and for the last 10 years, he was the foreman, so he was the boss. But and I worked for him for a while in summers. He would never teach me how to weld because he didn't want me to even look down that path, because he'd spent all that time waking up at 5 a.m, driving hours to the job site, being out in all sorts of weathers. He's like, hey, get an office job, whatever you do, it's always 70 degrees, no matter what the time of the year. And stick with that, stick with school because you're good at it. I wasn't. So I think a lot of those factors really came into play. But then probably the nail in the coffin for that was I was halfway through undergrad, and I was on the PT med track. And I started talking to some people that were going out into the job force, and they were kind of limited with where they could go and the offers that they were getting. And I started thinking more of maybe another influence. My uncle was a chiropractor down in Georgia. So I called him up, and he shared a few things like why he liked being in business for himself. And then it was around that time, it's like, okay, I think I'm gonna not go into PT or med school. I'm gonna see what I need prereqs to get into chiropractic college, because I felt that gave me more freedom, because for the most part, chiropractors are self-employed. They own their businesses. So versus like a PT where, yeah, you can do that. And there certainly are ones that are self-employed, but you are more reliant on getting referrals from the medical system because you need those scripts. Chiropractor, people can walk off the street and see me. So it's me right to the people versus having to rely on someone else to do things.
Gotcha. So you switch majors and you go into chiropractic and graduate and hung a shingle out, or
Pretty much. Part of it was like, I think, coercing from my parents. They had a building and my mom had a massage therapy business for a while. And they said, hey, you got this building here. We give you cheap rent if you want to get started. And I started to look around, and I didn't really have a plan. I mean, my wife was down in the DC area at that time, and we had talked, and it's like, look, I can open up down here and pay $3,000 a month rents, maybe more than that. And which would require me to see X amount of people and be higher volume, and a lot of struggles with that. Or we can go to my hometown where I already have people that I know. I have some inroads there, and I got cheap rent, and we can see how it goes from that perspective. My wife, being an occupational therapist, she could find jobs wherever at the time. So we moved up and we gave it a start. And yeah, basically I remodeled the space, hung a shingle, and spent a lot of days twiddling my fingers. Yeah. And slowly getting people to trickle in. And then this just built from there. Amazing. It's amazing looking back on it. It's like, it's amazing that happened, and I was able to get that to work, but it did.
Well, and I guess at that age, you didn't have as many needs financially either. So you could do the startup path and take your time. And that's interesting. The idea that you could have gone to DC, and certainly I know Susie and her story, and we interviewed her on the Business Builder Way. Her episode will come out right before yours, and so she's an entrepreneur also. But yeah, you could have gone to DC. There's more people, but you chose to come back to your hometown and be a shining light in our community, and assume that everything would work out financially as well. And I know we're fortunate to have you around here.
No, it was nice to come back to the area. And if you would have told me that when I left for undergrad that I'd be back here, I don't know what I would have said. I probably would have said, no, probably not. I want to go out and do other things. But that's not the part about grad school, because it was between the time I graduated high school and came back, it was probably 8 years. So I went to Elizabethtown, started grad school down in Atlanta. So I got kind of the big city feel in the South, and then went into upstate New York, Finger Lakes region was the grad school I transferred to and finished out chiropractic college. But then I did my internship on Long Island. So I got a taste of a lot of different areas. And then I would visit Susie down, and she's actually in the Baltimore area at the time. And a lot of traffic, crime was an issue. So it's like, where do we want to raise a family? And I knew what was up here, and I'm happy with it. And I knew it was a safe area, good schools. So that's why we ended up moving back.
So then on your journey, so you have this chiropractic clinic in a building that your parents said, hey, lease this because it's empty and we need a reliable tenant anyway. And you got going. And so what's, like, if you think of like stages, what would be the next stage? What is the next chapter, or chapters in a book, right? What's the next chapter after hung a shingle?
Hire first employee. So I worked with my sister was a massage therapist at the time, worked for my mom. And so she started working for me as well as a massage therapist and kind of receptionist, but that wasn't her thing. And but then it got to be, it might've been a year out, maybe 2 tops. where I was talking to someone, they weren't quite happy with where they were at. And I was starting to get busier and busier. And I knew I was missing phone calls, because if I was busy and my sister was busy doing a massage, phones ringing. I mean, if I just capture one of those or two of those a week, that would help me grow faster. So I rolled the dice and I took a chance, and we doubled revenue between the time I hired someone to the end of that first year. So that ended up being a real good choice. And she ended up being with me for 15 years and growing with the practice. So that would be chapter 2. Chapter 3 would probably be when we moved. So talk about a conversation like, hey, mom, dad, I'm not renewing my lease this year.
Yeah.
It was in an old model home. And it was a model home year in the 70s, and it never got sold. It had been businesses since. So it was kind of broken up, weird. And I just knew I couldn't grow out of that space and feel legitimate. Like it just wasn't set up that way professionally. So I drove past this vacant building several times over the course of a few months. I looked at it, it was beautiful. It's where I'm at now. And I'm like, it's going to be too expensive. So I got a hold of the landlord, and the rent actually wasn't anywhere nearly as bad as I thought. So we decided to move in, and that's when we opened up the health food store as well.
Yeah. And to tie that back to the earlier part, space was bigger than what you needed, but you managed to fill it. I think that's a question that I hear a lot of people ask, that, like, should I have the demand first and then go whatever it is, new building, new truck, new learning course, employees, should I have the demand all there and have it all lined up, or should I go? It's like Kevin Costner's Field of Dreams, right? If you build it, he will come. You have to be afraid you're going to have an empty baseball field with no players coming out of the cornfield, right? But
yeah,
you did.
the full story is it was 3 bays in this office building. That's how he built it, but it wasn't built out yet. So it was just, there was no walls. It was stone. I don't think the floor was even poured yet at that point. So I had free reign to do with whatever I want. So I'm like, well, I knew what I needed for the chiropractic footprint. It was like a space and a half. So then we had the other space and a half for the health food store. And we actually ended up connecting them. My idea was that the chiropractic checkout person could be the store checkout person in case it got really slow. It never worked out that way. It's always too busy for both sides to have one person manage both. But we had the same business manager for both, and I was able to bounce back and forth between the two. So it worked out well. But yeah, it was kind of a leap of faith at the time, where it was like, all right, let's just do this. And we were young enough at the time, we didn't have kids, and the banks were giving out money pretty freely back then. It was before the crash in 2008. So it's like, all right, it's just something else on the balance sheet, and we'll see if we can make it work and see how it goes.
It's fun to share when it's pertinent how I met people. So I met you during between chapter 2 and 3. And
I think it was actually chapter 1 and 2.
Oh, okay. Before the employee.
You're still in the old place, and maybe Deb was working with us by then. So
you were in the old place.
You're right. It was probably chapter 2. It was, yeah.
Yeah. So we had an opportunity at the company where I was working with my dad in the family business to go do a Red Cross blood drive, and the location was a mobile unit in your parking lot.
Yeah.
And I had not heard of Blue Mountain Chiropractic, which was your prior name on that shingle, until that day I went to give blood down there. Yeah,
I still remember that. We did that once. That was after Katrina, maybe, whatever the case was. It was after there was like a catastrophe and they needed more blood, and so we contacted the local Red Cross, and they set up in our parking lot.
So you did it to fill a need, and it was also nice to have people come to your parking lot too. Both of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The intent was to help promote the business too. So I'm not all altruistic.
Well, often businesses do things that are for a reason for the business, and it ends up really benefiting the community in some way. I think that's beautiful. I think that's partially how this all works. So that's wonderful. And then later on, I got to know you better because we had a farm, and I was trying to grow my customer base, and I was like, Buddy Touchinsky at this Healthy Habits Natural Market, my people that are going to come buy organic pork and chicken are there, and maybe I could set up in his parking lot as one of my drop-off points. And the beautiful thing is then they could go inside your store and shop and get other things, and it'll be mutually beneficial. And that was fun. I still have old pictures of Thomas and I in your parking lot in the back of my truck handing out pork. and putting a turkey, Thanksgiving turkey sign up list at your front counter, and those were all good times. So then, so you're doing that, and health food store, chiropractic, everything we would say was like kind of nice and a nice business, but you're still unsettled. What I want to say another chapter is when you started really focusing more on online presence and being intentional, and even doing some health coaching, but I might be missing a chapter. So what's
No, I think you're right. That would be the next chapter, where it was and this goes back to an earlier question, which there was another part to that, is why so many different things. Part of it was diversification. A mentor, or something I read years ago was, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And someone said something once. They said, with the stroke of a pen, the legislator for Pennsylvania could totally change my whole business model if they just say, well, now it's not covered by insurance, or now you got to do it this way, or whatever the case may be. So somewhere in the back of my head, it was like, all right, I needed to diversify. So the health food store was part of that diversification. And I always like the idea too of gaining an income from not physically having to be there and do stuff. So a little bit of time freedom there. And so that's the health food store. So the next step of that was, all right, further diversification, while also pursuing something that, it's kind of like why I got into chiropractic in the first place. Because a chiropractor was actually my mom's cousin in Tower City. For those of you that are local, he did chiropractic, like hands-on, like the joint pain, muscle pain, neck pain, but he also did like supplements and nutrition and lifestyle stuff too. So that was always in the back of my mind, that that's what a chiropractor does. But when I went through school and got trained and came out, it was mainly focused on neck pain, back pain, joint pain, stuff like that. Even though education, we got the other stuff, but I was just initially, all right, I want to get really good at that stuff first, the neck pain, back pain, physical stuff. But then, so fast forward, we're 5, 6, 7 years into my career. And it's like a few things. One is kind of get bored with that, doing the same thing all the time. And we're pretty good at solving neck pain, back pain, joint pain. So it's like, all right, that's kind of a check that box. I figured that out for the most part. So what's next in this lifestyle medicine? So I would always talk to people, or we have the intake form with other conditions that you have. So I knew there was stuff I could do for them, right? Or I'd ask them, okay, what's your doctor doing for your heartburn, or your irritable bowel syndrome, or your diabetes? And they say, oh, it's just medication. Well, how's that working? Well, it's okay, but I still have it. So I knew I could do more. So I got into functional medicine, lifestyle medicine, and health coaching. So that would be the next chapter there. But also, again, diversifying both in income revenue sources. And then, so my hands, a chiropractor, so I'm holding my hands up on the screen here. Like I'm starting to get some, it's called I forget the name of it now, but the Vikings disease is a common name for it. But it started thickening of the kind of the surface of the hand. So I'm getting hand tightness. So I knew, like, all right, I'm only 43 now. At the time I was only 38. Do I have another 20 years? Maybe not. So maybe I need to get another basket full of eggs. So just in case. So that kind of led me into the lifestyle stuff, all of those things.
Right. Functional medicine. That makes sense. I was missing that term from your journey. And so then in that pursuit, the functional medicine, helping people in an even bigger way, and diversification, you're still doing some of that. Well, I mean, you're doing that online, and that just your message helps people, helps entrepreneurs, anybody listening that wants to just understand how to be more proactive about their health could follow you and pay attention. And then if they're local, they can go to Peak, and they can also, you do still have some online options that you're doing, right?
Yeah. So that was part of your question before, is that the next chapter was like putting myself out there and getting more online. So social media was growing more and more. So that certainly helped part of that. But another part of it was a mentor I had, Satya Patel, who was doing that himself. And what attracted me to him, and even people like Gary Vaynerchuk to a certain extent, is they were teaching people stuff with like no intention of getting any return on it necessarily. And for me, it was like, all right, I see that there's like this, like we'll call it an injustice out there, where there's people having these problems, and there's some simple solutions to them. And we often throw up walls, especially in conventional healthcare. It's like, all right, to get this information, you need to pay your copay, you need to go to the doctor's office, you need to go back and sit in the room and wait, and then get the information then. So, but there's a lot of stuff that we can do short of all of that can help way more people. That's safe for almost everyone. So I like the idea of And even if it's not offering a solution, at least offering the education behind it, the background. So here's why you get diabetes. Here's what affects your blood sugar levels. Here are the things that you should be doing. And if you don't do them, it's leading to a lot of the health problems that we deal with. So Sachin was sharing this stuff, and I like that. So I've been kind of following in those footsteps. Gary Vaynerchuk's the same from a business perspective. He shares a lot of knowledge, and then knowing that the people that really need him, they're going to find him. And I mean, he's built probably $100 million business over the past 6-8 years since I started following him even. So I like that idea of sharing and serving, and then the people that need you will find you and they'll know what you're all about. So the people I work with like kind of know me already, and it's a lot easier talking to someone like that versus having to like build that rapport and educate all in that first interaction when they start with you.
Gotcha. So this drive to, so that is kind of like, if you build it, they will come. You start moving in faith through social media platforms to help people and get the message out and get the word out there without even knowing completely why you're doing it. It's not like you were calculating this out and thinking, aha, if I get out there and I put these videos out there, then they'll come. And you didn't necessarily know that. You're just following the path of Sachin and Gary Vaynerchuk, the two people you mentioned, and right. And now you're smiling. So
yeah, for being honest, I didn't know how. It's like, how do I, so I'm getting this following, how do I monetize it? How do I make an income? Because I love doing this stuff, and I know people need more help than just the tips that I'm providing on social media. So yeah, so like you say, like, oh, I didn't plan the intention of like doing it to build a business, and I didn't even know how to make money off of it at that point in time, or how to make that part of my career. So it was this, yeah, it was truly just sharing for the sake of sharing at that point.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's sometimes I think that I'm supposed to know all the how, or I'm going to calculate it all out, when really most good things happen because I put energy out there. And as I put energy out there that serves, and boy, this almost goes back to like, Zig Ziglar type stuff. As we serve other people, then lo and behold, certain, not even their needs, but desires we have will be met, almost as if by accident, and you're doing that. So before this, I want to talk some about how that building that demand and what's happening then leads to you saying, you know what, I think I'm going to really go all in and jump in, and we're going to build a whole new brick and mortar. Before we talk about that, you did our journey together involved you coming out here, and you're a really practical guy. You mentioned hunting and those things. Why you're so diverse, as I think about it, from the very cerebral, trying to understand health, and from a scientific, holistic point of view, and you like hunting, and you've been on borough council, and you've got a great group of friends, and you go cold immersion plunging after yoga, and you came out here and helped gut chickens at the farm, and we had these conversations as we'd look out over the field with our hands and warm chickens for people. And so I held the first ever live business builder camp event, and I was like, I'm going to invite Buddy and try to get him to come. And we weren't doing regular coaching together, but you came to that event, and now in some way, shape, or form, you've been around the business builder camp community ever since. So that's part of your journey, and meeting mentors, partially me, but also really the group. It's really the group, and it's the individuals in the group. Could you share a little bit about why did you go to that live event, or what did you get out of it, and how has that meeting mentors and talking to other people, asking questions, been part of the journey to here?
Yeah, that was a huge step, and I don't know what chapter we're in right now, but I probably had the health food store for maybe 5 or 6 years at that point. I might have been a year into functional medicine, because I remember talking about the programming that I was trying to create then, and I was trying to create a package and understand how to promote it to people. So I definitely was a year or two in the functional medicine at that time, but going to the live camp was the first time I really got around other business builders. I mean, I had Sachin Sachin's group, which I was a mentee in there, and he had a coaching program, which I ultimately signed up for to get help implementing the functional medicine stuff, and it helped with the online stuff. So I got some exposure to it there. But that was from like that niche perspective in health coaching and functional medicine. But when I sat with those business builders there, I mean, we had a meat farmer, we had a refrigeration salesperson and owner. I think he might have been the owner. We had the two guys there. We had someone that's trying to build a church, so we had a pastor at a church. Who else do we had? We had a contractor. So my point is, people from not the healthcare world. But as we started to share more about ourselves throughout that first day, especially because I think you had an hour on the agenda that all get to meet one another, and I think it took us the whole day, which is awesome. And but hey, different businesses, different industries completely, but same problems. And a lot of those problems were like not just like employee problems, and we all have those as businesses, but it's like headspace problems. Like, what do I do? Do I do this or I do that? Or I'm afraid, or I'm not sure I want to do this. So we shared a lot of the same stuff. So that really, really helped from that perspective. And then as that relationship grew over the years, and I got to meet more people in the business builders group, I started meeting people that have done stuff bigger than I've ever been exposed to. So my grandfather, they had the barroom and tavern, they had that. That's all they ever went. My dad was a welder employee, my mom employed. So I had I didn't know what like the next step was or what was possible. I don't know what I thought. Like, okay, people just are born into this, they inherit it. Yeah, they might start it, but they're like these amazing, special people. We all are, and they all are. But you realize like, okay, it's not always easy. There's always stuff going on in the head. Like it's they're regular people. So we're all regular people. We're all like one another. And so if they can do it, knowing that their struggles that they went through, it's like, hey, I think I can do this too. So it expanded my vision of what could be possible, I guess, is the bottom line.
Right. And then you and you've continued to expand your vision of what's possible, and you keep going into places where you have, I want to say, they say we have neuroplasticity and our brain can change and new pathways can be formed. And I don't know you know more about all that behind the scenes than I do, but I've seen it happen when people show up open and they're listening and they kind of check their ego at the door. They do expand. And I think even sometimes you can almost feel your brain like being messed with and expanding, and you're like, oh, it's all happening. And you just continue to put yourself into that space. And that particular event you're talking about, not only were you all sitting at that table and telling each other's, talking about your own situation and seeing the truth in your world and other people's stories, things like that. Like, you drove down there with Jason Bauer, who's a second generation operator of a Dunkin' Donuts franchise, which they sell a lot of sugar there, buddy. And sometimes you ask people to not eat as much sugar, and yet you two guys, just even the drive there, you're speaking intentionally about the things you have in common, because there may be something different about those products. But when it comes to people and credit and profit and loss, and should you go for it or not, those things are all so similar. And yeah, that day I had an hour in my agenda, and I had a very tightly scheduled day and a whole packet of handouts we were going to go over. And it didn't take very long for me to realize that what I needed to do is help hold space for you all to get your stories out there and get that shared energy, and then take the rest of the days that we were together to help form what you all were going to leave with, and form how you were going to change. And yeah, so my job was just to help guide that, but not to get in the way of it. And it was really beautiful. And that's actually kind of a turning point in my story, watching everybody create together in that house that we had rented. So that brings us up to today. And at some point you said to yourself, you get another call, and you get a call because this is big. Like, what you're doing now is big. And I don't want to make it big, like, because we always want to say you're just doing the doable. Like you said, business owners, you're all, it's that whole, like, everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time. And That's all really true. But what you're doing now is big, and it's significant. Having this whole new building, bringing together, I would say it's a bunch of people with initials behind their names. You're no longer the only one that has these designations. It's a whole new place for you. It's significant. How did you hear that call, and how did you get started with what you're doing right now?
Yeah. So one part of that is I try to think about that part of it too much, because when I think about, like, I'm starting a freaking medical practice. I'm just buddy Touchinsky. I'm a chiropractor from Schuylkill County, PA.
Right.
My dad was a welder. My mom was a therapy. Like, what am I doing? Like,
Perfect.
these big corporations are like struggling to keep these things open, and we've had some go bankrupt recently. And I'm like, why am I like, what? How? So I that overwhelms me at times. So I try not to think about it. But the call was, we were coming out of COVID. So there was a slight little calling, maybe 3 or 4 years before COVID. My landlord, or maybe it was only a couple of years before COVID, my landlord came to me and said, hey, I'm going to expand the building, and here are my plans, and do you want any of the space? And at that time, I was like, I was back and forth between taking it or not. And actually, we were going to move our store because the other neighbor, the salon, wanted some more space. So there really wasn't space for this. So we were going to expand the practice slightly. But it didn't include all of these extra services and nothing like it is now. So we had plans to move the store, expand the practice slightly, and then COVID hit. So everything put on hold. Coming out of it, now salon spa, they were shut down for like 6 months. So they couldn't commit to moving anymore. So he said, hey, I want to move forward. And it's part of his long-term plan. And here's the space, here's the cost, here's what I have available. So I sat there and sat in my home office, and I remember thinking, do we go for it? Like, I didn't have a physician back then. I had already kind of talked to, so I had a few conversations with him leading up to this point. I had conversations with the other chiropractor that's joining us now. I had a conversation with the one nurse practitioner. They were loosely on board. No contract signed, no formal commitments, nothing like that. Just like, hey, I like the idea. I think I want in. No physician. That was like a major linchpin, because state law, you need medical practice, you need a physician to be on board too. So it's like, all right, he wants an answer. I was putting it off for maybe a couple months. He's going to township. He wants to put plans together, all this other stuff. So I remember thinking, all right, when I'm 80 and I look back and I didn't do this, I would regret. That would just kill me. I would regret the hell out of it. And if I didn't do it and just stuck where I'm at now and just wrote out the rest of my career there, maybe did some more online stuff. So I'm like, you know what? Why not? I mean, the brain was a little clouded because coming out of COVID, everything changed. I mean, it upset the apple cart, and like just to think that places could shut down for like 3 months, 6 months, and all that. So the reality was warped. So part of that probably helped, because if reality wasn't warped like that, it probably wouldn't have warped enough in my head to say, screw it, let's go for it. What's the worst that can happen? I mean, we're in a global pandemic at that point. So a lot of worse things could happen. So why not?
Nice. And so then what are some of the first practical steps? So, I mean, clearly the landlord, maybe a phone call to the landlord, or what are other doable steps that you did?
Yeah, so somewhere around that time, I used an online program to draw out the office space to see what I needed, to see because there were some dimensions we could play with. I knew my max size, which we ended up getting the max size, but I want to see what type of rooms I could fit, what kind of space. That brought in the yoga studio at the time. I reached out to her and I said, hey, you got a small space now. Why don't you come out and join us? We're all going to be in this great new complex. So that was part of it as well. And then once I got a decent floor plan together and talked to the nurse practitioner and the chiropractor, it's like, all right, let's do this and we'll figure out the rest. And I was going through some other coaching at the time too. And so I was kind of working on things like concepts like, don't worry, don't sweat the small stuff. Don't worry about the details. You have your vision. That stuff will work itself out as long as you do all the things that you need to do leading up to it. So I'm like, all right, the universe will provide whatever. And I don't know if I necessarily believed it at the time, but it ended up working out that way because I committed to the space, committed to basically a 5 or 10 year lease or whatever it was. And it's like, all right, now we need a medical provider. And I was just in a group, and it was in Sachin's group actually sharing, because we had like a council together of people. I now become a coach for them instead of just being the mentee. And so we had like a coaches meeting, and there were 5 or 6 people, and group 1 being Dr. Liana, who's with us now. And we're going around sharing, like, what are we working on? And I said, I'm working on this project. I just need a physician yet. And still struggling with that. And I reached out to a few people. Some deals fell through there. Local physicians that I thought I had on board ended up having non-competes, so they fell through. And then she messaged me afterward and said, hey, I'm interested. Let's jump on a call. And the rest is history from there.
Nice. So that's that's a story looking back and seeing how all these things are connected. But again, it goes back to kind of like whatever energy goes into this, having a group of friends, I think also comes back into play with this, how you're building networks, talking to people, growing that, planting seeds, and then these things are coming back together, buddy. So really, really well done. When you think about your journey, the other thing we want to talk just a little bit about is that there are points where the bad stuff comes, and you're tested, and you think, maybe I just want to turn back. Can you tell us share a bit about some of the hard times?
Yeah, so I don't know if it's because I'm getting older, because maybe I have more to lose, because there's less of a runway now to things like retirement. And I got a daughter now. I don't know if it's that. I don't know what it is. But thinking back to when I first opened, it was like, I don't know if I experienced the same amount of ups and downs as I have this past year. Part of it too is I think back then maybe it wasn't completely out of my comfort zone, or maybe I was too naive, or whatever the case may be. But having, like, with this new project, pushing myself so far out of my comfort zone would come upon some situations where, and looking back, it doesn't seem like nearly as bad as it did back then. So there were days where I'm like, all right, what's plan B here? Because if this doesn't work out, like, do I go bankrupt? Like, how does this, I never even considered that stuff before. I got this lease. Now what? Well, I can help the landlord find someone to fill it, and that'll work out, and we'll figure something out there. But I was literally like, I don't think this is going to work. There were whole days, maybe even better parts of a week, where I really don't think this is going to work out. And we even had a trip of a lifetime. We had it planned pre-COVID. We went to Italy for 2 weeks. And it took everything I had some days just to suppress the thoughts and the worries, so I can be in the moment and enjoy. And overall, probably I give myself like an A- on that. There were still times where the thoughts would creep in about what was going on at home. And I had this, like, I don't know what true depression is. I don't know if I've ever been truly depressed like some people get. But there were days where it felt like there's like, when the thoughts would come into my head, it was like a weight pushing down, or even like a darkness pushing down. So maybe that is depression. I don't know. Pushing down on me, where it's just like almost hard to breathe. And never cried in my life other than my grandfather's funeral, when my dogs died, and maybe a few other things in between there. But I had a few good cries back then, where it was just like, I have no idea what the F to do. I had a budget I was looking at, because I had these professionals and we made it work. But there were things where I had some commitments that I'd made, and I'm like, I have no way to pay for this. And I looked at a spreadsheet that I had worked out with our budget that fit at the time, but then situations changed, and it's like, I have no idea how to make this work. And probably for 3 months, I had like good chunks of the weeks where, or a couple of days out of the week, where something would happen or something would pop up, and I'd go into that, and you just can't think about anything else. It's just this flood, like scientifically or physiologically, know that those neurotransmitters just wash over you. And I actually felt the washing over, to the point where I couldn't concentrate or think about anything else or do anything else. So yeah, there were definitely some down times, and it was scary, because I'd never experienced that before. And it was probably because I just never really pushed myself to the limit like that, and really tested myself before in that manner anyway.
Well, you said a whole lot there, and it's true. My observation has been that as people get older, or they've built more, there's more to lose, and you got to watch it. And I think you're absolutely right that you're stretching, and you're going into unknown territory. It's interesting that you know a lot about like being washed over and this neurotransmitter thing, right? Because it's happening to you and you must sort of be aware of it, but you can't always get your way out of it. I want to say that you are you use the program that we have at Business Builder Camp so well, and you've used it and your resources to manage that stress and to manage where you're at. And so people could go join another specialized group to get the same thing. But a lot of what it's half of the responsibility is on the person in the group to get what they need. And you do that really well. And so for other people, what can they do? Well, you follow the process of writing down visions and plans kind of longer term and creating projects that you're going to work on for the next 90 days, and then taking that plan sheet, having it somewhere where you can refer back to it. And then the other thing you really do well is, and anybody can do this. You could go into our little community, and on Monday you make a list of the things that you're going to work on, the things that are important for that week, and then Friday you check in and take a look at how you did on that list. And sometimes you say, I didn't do this, so I didn't get to it, or something got in the way, but you keep week after week, you've got this habit of doing that, and you're building things. You got one brick at a time, or one board at a time at this clinic, one commitment, one Monday commitment, one Friday check-in at a time. And whenever you get in those low spots when you've been in those low spots that you're talking about, you don't come into our group meetings with anything to hide or anything to protect. You show up and say to the other people in that group, like, hey fellas, I need some help. Or also, hey, I kind of crushed it this week, because both of those things are important for you and the other people in the group. So really well done.
Yeah, that part of that was just from seeing it from the other group members. Like we had one group member in specifically that when I first joined, he was going through some rough stuff, like almost going bankrupt. And at other times, like battling his own demons with depression and some other things. And even though you can kind of see this person as an ego-driven person, and like maybe they wouldn't want to share this stuff, wouldn't want to share the chink in the armor, so to speak, he did. So when I was going through the rough stuff, it's like that really helped model for me, like, okay, here's you share everything. And especially in a group like that, I'd been a member of the group for probably over a year at that point. And so I trusted everyone. And it's like, no, I teach this in my own group. So when things get the toughest, when you do the worst, when you get the most depressed, when you get off plan, that's the time when it's most important to show up for yourself. So show up to your groups, get help, reach out for support. And that's because that's what gets you back on track. So I was really committed to that. And then the post you're talking about, the Monday and Fridays, that helped me because at some point along the way, well, one is I've said this before to you, but having run groups myself and putting stuff out there, not getting an engagement, I know how it feels as the group owner. So I'm like, I'll help Wayne out and I'll start posting so that other people post. And so he's not radio silence. And but what it really did, it really helped me. And I just set out to say, okay, I have all this stuff going on, but if I can only get these 2 or 3 things done this week, then I will have won the week, regardless of forget all of the big stuff and all of the stuff. And there might be 1,000 things that I really need to do, but all right, if I just do these next 3 things, they're going to be the most important things to move me forward, that next step in the business, and that they're doable too. I usually try to make them doable so that I get that win at the end of the week. Sometimes it doesn't happen, or sometimes it's a project that I can push off. But yeah, that's helped move me forward. It's kind of like when I used to do the GoRec stuff where you got a heavy pack on, you're carrying 50 pounds over your shoulder. Hey, if you can take 1 step, you can take 2 steps. Don't worry about a mile. Take that next step.
Right.
That next step, then you can take 1 more step, and then take 1 more step, and eventually you make the mile. So kind of that mentality.
Yeah, well, way to go. So we're gonna wrap it up just for we're kind of getting close to time. I love your story and could keep asking questions and having a conversation. One of the things that I always ask business owners on the podcast is, I like to use journals. We like to hand journals out. I think self-reflection, writing things down is valuable. What is something that you think, what would be a worthwhile question for business builders to take some time and reflect on and get their thoughts on paper about?
Not sure if this exactly answers the question, but one thing that helped me was writing every once in a while. So it might have been, last time I did this might have been 4 months ago, but taking time to update that vision. So what's the name of that book about something vision, something
Vivid vision is something you've
Yeah.
mentioned recently that you read.
So I like that one where it says it takes you out like 3 or 5 years or something like that, and write out, basically it's the average day, what things would look like in the business 3 or 5 years from now, starting from the moment you walk in the door. What sights are you seeing? What are you hearing playing on the music overhead? What scents are you smelling? What colors are on the walls? What are people? So going through that whole visioning process, so you know what the end product looks like and where you're heading with things. Because sometimes it gets overwhelming to sit there from today and it's like, all right, where do I go next in order to build this thing? It's easier to like go out in the future and then reverse engineer it from there and take away the pieces backwards versus going forwards. That's really helped me quite a bit. And even in the beginning, even before all those dark times, because this helped me during those dark times, go back and read what we're building towards and why we're doing this. I wrote like basically a 1 year, like month by month. All right, month 1, we're going to do this and this stuff's going to happen. Month 2, we're going to do this stuff and this stuff's going to happen. Then we got thrown off on timelines because of the building, but otherwise, I think we're pretty much on pace with a lot of the stuff in sequence anyway, not necessarily dates and times, but yeah, that's helped me a lot, is just visioning, forecasting, and then having that to share with people as well. So another thing I did was I wrote one, like a summary of the year, and then the next 6 months, what that looks like. And I shared that with my ownership team, my partners, so that we're all seeing where we're going with this versus kind of being like unsure what's going to happen next.
Well, you definitely answer the question. And so, yeah, the idea that people can sit down anytime, maybe even every 4 months or so, and really write out their vision and use the book Vivid Vision. That's a great prompt and a great help to people. So thanks for all you've given today. Thanks for showing up big time on your path. We wish you the best, and we'll be watching as you go. How can people find you who are interested in entrepreneurial well-being? Because you've got lots of answers for people. How do we find you?
I'm very active on Facebook. I think that might be the best way to, if you friend follow me, that's fine. I'm pretty generous with my followers. So yeah, you can reach out and just look. I'm probably the only Buddy Touchinsky in the world. So if you search for me, that's going to be me. And also peakintegrativemed.com is our practice website, and any contact form emails on there, you see, you'll find me. If you want to get in touch with me personally, have a question, comment, or need some help, need some direction, I'm always happy to serve people and offer some help. Buddy at drtouchinsky.com is my personal email address.
How do you spell Touchinsky?
Touch in Sky, TOUCHINSKY.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, buddy. And thanks for joining us on the Business Builder Way. Go get them.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning into the Business Builder Way podcast. If this episode spoke to you, click that subscribe button and share it with a friend. That's how this message gets out into the world. If it is helpful for us to have a short conversation, I'd love to do that. Send me an email at wayne@businessbuildercamp.com.